Steve, do you have an update on Wiggins? Just what's going on with that foot?
Yeah, I think he's okay, but he'll warm up and see how the warm up goes, and then we'll go from there.
And then who starts for Clay?
I'm not gonna reveal that this time. I don't feel in the giving spirit tonight, so you'll hear later on.
Can you share a little more about Wiggins? When did it happen? I mean,
actually, I can't. I didn't even know until Raymond just told me just now that he was questionable. I had no idea. So,
Steve, is a part of you surprised, and given the amount of shooting that you guys have on the roster, that you've gone through a stretch where you've had so many games where almost nobody can hit a three?
A little bit, yeah. We when you watch the tape, there's definitely shots that you kind of expect are going to go in, and but I think sometimes shots go when you're playing with a good spirit and energy and enthusiasm, and I think the opposite is true. Also, if you're feeling a little sorry for yourself and things aren't going your way, if you don't bring that spirit, then it's shots aren't going to go in. It's just, there's a connection there somehow. So I just think we got to get back to really playing with great energy and enthusiasm. And I haven't sensed that much over the last couple of weeks.
Stephen, in the second half, was it just the nature of the game with Kuminga not being quite as much a part of the second half last night?
Yeah, it was just the way the game was going and what I felt would give us the best chance to win down the stretch was the experience of one.
I'll test your lineup mood out then. Is Kuminga still going to start tonight?
Say that again?
Is Kuminga still in the starting lineup?
Yeah, I'm not going to reveal that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is Steph in the starting lineup?
Bad guy. Bad Steve is coming out.
Kuminga got a technical. How did he respond to his first career tee?
Like the way he responds to everything, just kind of with a blank stare. He's just soaking everything in these days. Definitely a flop. There wasn't much of an elbow there. He probably didn't deserve it, but that kind of stuff happens.
Just generally, do you think Clay's just got to shoot himself out of this, shoot himself into this, whatever way you want to look at it, or maybe be a little more temperate with the way he's shooting the ball?
I think the whole situation is tricky given the minutes, starting and then sitting for such a long time, and then coming back in, he's on that bike. I've never really been a part of something like this where there's such an extreme in terms of, sort of being out for 2.5 years and then coming back and trying to get the rhythm back and then, that big gap between your runs within the game. I think it's all been a little bit tough for him and for us. And it's definitely something to consider. Are we better off trying to divvy up the minutes in a different way? I think we have to examine that. As far as the shooting, watching the tape, most of his shots, if not all, were actually good shots. And he's, one of the best shooters on earth. So we want him finding his rhythm and we want him aggressive. And there's plays where he could probably drive and kick a little bit too. And I'm very confident that he's going to find the rhythm that he needs, and our team will do the same.
Is he still a 24-minute limit kind of?
Yeah, I think. He'll move up a couple of minutes, every week or so, approximately. So we're in the 22 to 23 range at this point.
That blank stare is familiar to any of us who've had a teenage boy like you.
Say that again?
I said that blank stare you speak of is familiar to any of us. Clay's return, you talk about sort of being tricky to navigate. How has it impacted Steph? Steph had been kind of struggling with shooting percentage, I guess, compared to his historic numbers. And it seems like the last few games he started to shoot a little better. how has Clay impacted? Is Steph getting different shots because Clay's out there? Or what other factors go into that, do you think?
I think Steph has been really good, since Clay came back. I think he's been at his best in terms of his decision making, his game management. I thought the game against Detroit the other night was probably his best kind of point guard night of the year. I think he had 8 assists and 1 turnover and just played a really controlled game. And then last night he was brilliant. He just carried us. He looked strong, looked like he really had his rhythm and his timing and his edge back. So I think Clay's return has energized Steph, but it doesn't really impact the way he plays. Steph is pretty comfortable and confident no matter who's out there.
If I guess a quick follow-up, do you think in retrospect that Steph sort of got out of rhythm when he was pursuing the record? Bruce Fraser had sort of mentioned that, and I know we talked about it at the time, but as you look back, did that knock him off stride at all?
I think it could have. We had the game at home, maybe it was Atlanta or somebody, when he really shot a ton of threes, and some of them weren't his cleanest looks. And then, of course, just the human element, the nerves and all the hoopla. I think it's a little bit difficult, for a shooter to have all those different things going on. So I think that's a fair assessment.
Jae'Sean Tate has drawn some comparisons to Draymond, including from Andrew Bogut, who played with Tate in Australia and, of course, was here. When you look at Tate's game, what are the ways that stand out to you that he can impact the game for the Rockets?
Well, he's a great athlete. He's really strong. I think the comparison is similar in terms of body type, really, really strong. And even though technically undersized in terms of being, 6'5", 6'6", whatever he is, playing much bigger like Draymond does. And he's a really good player. He's fun to watch.
Steve, you mentioned a couple times after some losses with respect to Gary that, hey, maybe you should have played him more. Would you have put last night's game maybe in that category? And is it more difficult to play him with certain combinations with Draymond out?
Combinations are everything. With Draymond out, it does change things for everybody, not just Gary. Last night was not a game where I walked away thinking I needed to play him more. Every game's different. Last night we couldn't buy a basket other than Steph. We couldn't make anything, so I went with Damian early third quarter instead of Gary and felt comfortable with that. I think part of what's happening right now is with Draymond out, with Clay and Andre and Otto not playing back-to-backs, with JK's development, we don't really have a set rotation. And each game is different. And we've got, 4 or 5 guys who are all capable of helping us in very different ways. And so, what we lack in continuity and pattern in terms of our rotation, we try to make up for in terms of variety and what we can throw out there. But that's not always easy to do. We have to figure it out from game to game.
Steve, early this season, you guys took the floor and you had a defensive mentality pretty much every night. How hard is it to maintain a defensive mentality when Draymond's not there to make sure it's there?
Yeah, that's been lacking. I heard an interesting number today, which is that over our last 10 games, we're number 2 in the league in defense. Doesn't feel like it. And that's because we had last night and we had Milwaukee. There were some outliers in the other direction too, with Chicago and Detroit both having really subpar shooting nights. I don't think our defense has been as consistent, but how would it be, with the best defender in the world not being out on the floor and the guy who is, basically our heart and soul. So we miss him and we have to make up for his absence. But, that's the challenge. That's what we have to figure out as a staff, and that's what our players have to do on the court.
Rick, Steve, do you have a quick Rick Welch story? They unveiled his medallion on the Walk of Fame. Just any quick anecdote that maybe conveys his impact while you worked with him here?
Well, I don't know if there's one story. I worked with him in Phoenix for several years. Rick and I go way back, and I've always just loved his energy, his enthusiasm, his camaraderie. He sets such a great tone in a workforce. You know, when he's leading a group of people, there's just this natural energy that's authentic and beautiful. And so, frankly, one of the reasons I came to the Warriors is because he was here. And when I was interviewing for the job, you know, we had a couple of discussions. I knew what he was doing on the business side. I knew this franchise was kind of a sleeping giant. And I had so much confidence in what he was doing and just loved working with him in Phoenix. So he was a big reason for me coming here.